Hi, Dyslexic Genius here. I finished the Cheney phonograph, the one I've been doing this video stream on, and I hope you've been enjoying it. And I've gotten it back together. It had been sent to a phonograph restorer who probably never even took it apart because it wouldn't crank up. And it came to us. So I've got everything together. It runs well. These have very small springs in them. They're probably about 3/4 of an inch wide and very, very thin and really long. So on these, you need to crank it all the way up to make sure it's plain. And I packed this with super lube grease just because of that, to give it a little more horsepower out of the motor. I prefer the green grease, but I thought, well, this will work better on it. The governor drive gear has a little bit of wear in it because when it was assembled at the factory, there's a little bit of a hiccup. In a previous video, I talked about this plate, and the end of the spindle shaft hits this piece here that's bulged up. But what happened was this plate was resting on this bump in the casting right here. So it tilted up like this. So that made the whole spindle shaft go down into the motor. So I looked at this and I filed this part out of it. I set this in the vise and took my file and filed this out so this would fit flat the way it should have been originally. It's just a factory boo-boo. So when you look down here at the governor and you put the turntable on, because this is the bottom, everything goes that way. So now it's running. Now at the tilt part, this was all down another 1/16 of an inch, and it was running on the bottom of the spindle shaft gear. Then, because it's a paper gear, fiber gear, and you can't oil them, what I did was I took some graphite, powdered graphite I have, and while it was running, I put it in here with my finger, and it quieted the motor down a lot. But these motors don't crank up on the first crank because of the small springs, because a thicker spring will give you a lot more power to turn the motor over like a Victor or an Edison. So everything else is running well. The other thing I did was I was going to use the Hootie grease, but because of some wear on the motor, I took my green grease and my powdered graphite, a little trick I do, and I mixed it together, and I coated in on this gear and the gear under here to make it run a lot better. And it did help the motor to run. So let me fire it up. Everything's running well, but you'll see it won't fire up till you really get power on the springs. And that's, there we go. It's very quiet, but we still have a little bit of a rattle from the spindle shaft gear that runs the governor because it's a fiber gear. And you can kind of hear that, but once you pick it up, the motor quiets right down. If there was a problem, real problem with the gear, then you would probably have to change it out. But when I lift them up like this in videos, that shows you, you can really hear it. It's not vibrating through the soundboard of the workbench. I hope you've enjoyed these videos, and that's my tip for the day.